Let's dig a little deeper into the health and the legal aspects of this all-important issue with Fox News medical contributor Dr. Jeanette Nishwat and Job Creators Network President Alfredo Ortiz. I want to begin with you, Alfredo, just because I look at this and I think as someone who's not just a consumer, but as a small business owner, someone who wants the very best, not just for your family, but also for those around you who are trying to revive the economy. This would seem to have all sorts of potential problems. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it really does, Kevin, and good evening. Thank you for having me. It really does, and we've been talking to our small business owners across the country, and look, every single one of them is very concerned about this. It's very easy for a United or a Wells Fargo or et cetera to lose a few hundred people, let's say, that just refuse to do this. But when you're a small business owner and you're in that range between 100 and 500, when you lose 20 to 30% of your workforce, which is what we're estimating pretty much consistently, we're hearing from our small business owner, is their estimate of how many folks they would lose. You can't run a business that way. And so we're very concerned about this. And the other thing, Kevin, that we have great exception to is the way the Biden administration is actually portraying this as only applying to our largest employers in this country. I'm sorry, when I hear about that, I hear Delta, I hear Wells Fargo. I don't think about, Ed and Bill's manufacturing in Sioux City, Iowa. Right. And that's the biggest issue here, is that these are the folks who are going to be hit the most, the small business owners in that range of 100 to 500.
Dr. J, let me welcome you into the conversation. Two things stand out to me. Number one, we're still looking at least in terms of one shot, upwards of 65% of Americans have already gotten at least one. We still don't know the exact numbers of how many Americans who've not been vaccinated but have already experienced the coronavirus and may have immunity to it at this particular point. I'm just curious, from your vantage, is this something we have to do? Does this really speak to the statistics that people need to get out there, especially these smaller businesses? Because trust me, in these smaller communities, listen, if you live in a big town like D.C., I can get anything I want. But if I live in a small town, it's a lot more complicated to get the food, the news, the goods and services, even if you're going to end up with even 15% of people saying, I'm not going to take the shot.
Yeah, it comes down to a point where we have to have personal responsibility and accountability, understand and know your risk and protect yourself. And although we're still, Kevin, in the midst of a public health crisis managing this COVID pandemic, it's very important that we have alternatives and exemptions to the vaccine. For example, if you do have natural immunity from previous infection, you don't need to be vaccinated right away, or you might have an allergic reaction to the first dose. So we have to have alternatives. In this situation, fortunately, testing, weekly testing, masking is an alternative. And that's important because it's not a one-size-fits-all. When I take care of my patients, I accommodate their needs individually, not all in a blanket method of care. So I think it's important to look at the big picture, know your risk, understand what the prevalence is in the community of the current COVID level. Fortunately, as you mentioned, a high level of adults, about 80% have gotten at least one shot. And that is fantastic. The number of cases have dropped, but we still have about 1,000 deaths a day, so we still do want to take precaution.
Let me share a statement for both of you. This is a White House statement by President Biden on the vaccine mandate or testing rule. It reads thusly: as we've seen with businesses, large and small, across all sectors of our economy, the overwhelming majority of Americans choose to get vaccinated. There have been no mass firings and worker shortages because of vaccination requirements, despite what some predicted and falsely assert. Vaccination requirements have broad public support. Alfredo, quickly, I'm not so sure that's actually accurate. I think a lot of people do it because they have to do it to keep their jobs, to keep food on the table and feed their families. Your thoughts on that statement by the Biden administration?
Yeah, Kevin, all I can say is completely out of touch. This is not reality at all. Maybe with his cohorts, from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, maybe they're the ones that are agreeing to this, but all the small business owners that we're talking to are deathly afraid of this. Again, if you're 120 people, let's say manufacturing firm, and you lose 20, 25, 30% of your workforce, you can't keep operating. And the reality is here, even when you look at the cost, you know what the answer was from these big companies or from, the Chamber of Commerce? Go ahead and charge the employees. I mean, this is ridiculous. On top of everything else that they have, they're suffering high inflation, doubling of gas prices, natural gas prices going up.
Right.
I mean, now they're going to, spend another $30, $40, $50 a week. And what happens to all those folks who are in rural areas?
Yeah,
they're going to go trekking down 100 miles to go get their next COVID test. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. It's not necessary. We have COVID cases are declining. We're getting closer and closer to herd immunity. And, frankly, we have therapeutics there. So the idea of grave danger, which is what the Department of Labor is going to have to show that there's actual grave danger here, we just don't believe they're going to be able to hit that criteria.
It's going to make for a very interesting case. And obviously, I think a lot of people will be watching this incredibly carefully, especially with the impact it could have on small business. Dr. J, I owe you a solid. We'll catch you next time. Thank you for your time tonight, Alfredo. Same to you. You guys have a great weekend.
Thank you, Kevin. You as well.